Cade's injury, I think, knocks them out of the chance for a play-in berth, right? They're also 8-22. That alone also might knock it out, given the fact that the Eastern Conference is a bit stronger than what we've seen. Although you look across the league,
little underwhelming.
All five of the teams in the Atlantic have at least 13 wins. I guess that the Bucks, Cavs, and Pacers all have at least 15, and then the Heat and the Hawks. So what? Yeah, we're at 10. They're like 7 games back of the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Bulls
so the Bulls stink. They're out of the playoff picture, I think, at this point.
I agree.
Finding that balance between pseudo tanking while also trying to position your players in the best position is really interesting for them, because I think that the timeline for the Pistons is shortening quicker than what people think.
Yes.
Saddiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart are both extension eligible this year. And I think that Isaiah is probably going to be a little bit cheaper. I think he's the one that I would probably try to prioritize a little bit more than Saddiq based off of what I've seen. But Saddiq plays a position that's a little bit more valuable than Isaiah. But Isaiah's seems to be a little bit more dangerous when I watch him than Saddiq at this point. So, and plus the defense is better with Isaiah as well. Isaiah's physical, he's strong, he's a great rebounder, he can defend in space, everything like that. So there's that part of it. The cap situation is going to go quick for them. If they have to extend, but they don't know if Cade is 100% the number one option, right? There's a chance at this point that Cade is a really great number 2 option, right? Or he might be a number 1. I think we're still trying to figure that out. There's a case that, Isaiah Stewart might be a 6th man as opposed to a starter. There's a case that Saddiq Bey might be a rotation player as opposed to a starter. I think that the problem for them is they don't really have any answers on this, right? And now we're going into year 4 of Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, Saddiq Bey. And like I said, none of this even is before we get into Killian. And we have no idea what Killian is at this point. We're excited about what we've seen and the flashes that he showcased over the last couple of weeks. But we have no idea if he's a long-term piece for the Pistons at this point either.
Right.
So they're going to have to make actual financial long-term decisions that are going to have ramifications moving forward for the organization before knowing if this roster is good. And that's a real concern, I think. Where do you kind of stand on all of this as the Pistons try and build for an actual winner moving forward?
No, I think you brought up the elephant in the room. I think that's what this year was supposed to be about. Not only just building the chemistry, but finding out who are we riding with going forward. And I still think for some of those guys that are healthy, it's still the case. But that makes them interesting at the deadline to me, because talking to people in the organization, I don't think they didn't think this was a playoff team, but I do think they thought they would be better, have a better start than they did. And I've always worked under the assumption that next year is the year that they've really wanted to turn a corner. When Troy took over, the year 2023 always was kind of the year.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, they're going to have a ton of cap space this summer. And I work under the assumption that next year they want to be legitimately a contender for the playoffs. Whether that's play-in, playoffs, I still think that's the goal. That hasn't changed. And with that makes me wonder, do you trade a Bojan? Do you trade an Alec Burks? Because the Pistons don't want to be bad forever. They don't. And if we're being honest, if Bojan had not signed an extension and was going into next summer as an unrestricted free agent, he'd be one of the more coveted free agents on the market. And the Pistons have that locked up. Alec Burks, some people might say you can find a heat 'em up bench scorer anywhere. I'm for $10 million, I kind of want to keep Alec Burks around if I want to be good next year. Just the numbers he's put up this year and the comfortability he's at. So that makes me question, do the Pistons, are they even any bit sellers at the deadline, because if you want to be good at some point, you can't keep trading good players. And while you like a lot of the young players you have, like you mentioned, Sam, we don't know exactly what they are yet. So it's going to be an interesting situation over the next 2 months. I think they're going to do something. At a point, they do have to consolidate some of the young pieces. I don't know if it'll be in bulk or maybe an individual, but certainly this is a team that has to start piecing together what they want to look like. They have to start going for more proven players. And with that, obviously the elephant in the room also is Wembanyama. I still work under the assumption that the Pistons, and I know it's probably hard for people to see now, but now that they've gotten out of this tough part of the schedule and they've been playing close to 500 basketball over the last 12 games, I still think like there's like 4 teams that are probably, when it's all said and done, are going to be worse. And at that point, like I think the gap between the bottom 6 teams is so small, and will prove to be small, or maybe 5 teams, that of course, like you want to give yourself the best odds at the number 1 pick, but that is 14%. I would imagine maybe you see Bojan with lower back tightness if he's not traded at the deadline. Same with like Alec Burks and stuff like that. But like they're not going to be able to sit Isaiah Stewart. They're not going to be able to sit Killian Hayes. They're not going to be able to sit Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey. And maybe by January, these guys are starting to figure things out. So it's an interesting situation. I'm not really sure what it turns out to be, but they're going to have to figure out something, like you mentioned. I don't even know if I made any sense there, but.
Well, here's what I'll say. Like, I think they are pretty substantially better than the Hornets, for instance, right? Like, the Hornets have played a below average schedule so far in terms of strength of schedule, according to Basketball Reference, and they're still worse than the Pistons.
Yeah. And they have like 3 guys who have been in the league 5+ years in their starting lineup.
Yeah. The Hornets, they need to tear that. We'll talk about the Hornets in a minute here. Yeah. Jesus Christ. The look, the Bojan thing is interesting. They re-signed him for that extra year, but they did it in a way that, allows flexibility in terms of moving him. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that even makes him more valuable on the trade market.
Agreed.
To be honest. There are a lot of teams that could really use him. I actually don't know if Dallas is one. I've seen his name connected there. I would want someone that's a little bit more defensively solid, especially with the knowledge that we have no idea what Maxi Kleber is going to be moving forward here for them. It's a little bit hard to find the Bojan landing spot if you look around the league. Like, there are a lot of teams that could use him, but like trying to find the team that like will give up real asset capital is hard. Like, I think the Cavs could really use Bojan.
Ooh, I like that.
The Cavs just moved most of their semi-soon draft capital in the Donovan Mitchell trade. So like they're not a great option, I don't think. The Miami Heat could really use Bojan. Like, they need someone that can shoot. They need someone who can just kind of move the ball along, is willing to play without the ball in his hands. I just don't know what they have to offer necessarily. Like, it's one of those deals where you can maybe make a case like Memphis would be interesting for Bojan if they really decide to go for this. That's actually probably the one that like stands out most to me. Could you do something where, I mean, but the problem with that is like you almost, to match salary, it would have to be like John Conchar and something else, or John Conchar and like Brandon Clark or something. And A, that feels aggressive to me. If I was Memphis, I don't know if I would want to do that. And B, if you're Detroit, Brandon Clark is a free agent this summer, no. He signed an extension, but like he's about to get expensive. Brandon Clark is, what is he? It's, I think, like 12.5 for the next 4 years. Yeah, that sounds right. So that's not ideal either.
And he kind of overlap. Like they don't really need his skill set.
It's weird in that I think he's probably better than Marvin Bagley, but there's a lot of overlap with him and Marvin Bagley in terms of what they do, and they just signed Bagley to that big deal. Does having Marvin Bagley on the team make you stop trying to get Brandon Clark? I don't know necessarily, but like, I don't. It feels like an overlap of assets. Maybe is the way to put it. The Portland Trailblazers could use Bojan Bogdanovic, and we know that the Blazers and Pistons have trade history at this point following the Jeremy Grant deal. That's the one where I kind of look at it and I'm like, okay, maybe you could swing something there. Maybe they're willing to give up like a pick or something like that. And, the salary matching, I don't believe is like wildly hard if they really wanted to. Maybe that's it. Like maybe it's Bojan.
Yeah. But then I get it from the Portland standpoint, but then if I'm Detroit, I'm looking around and I'm like, am I going to use my cap space to replace Bojan when I already had Bojan? Like it's a weird spot. If I were Detroit, I would sit on my hands for most of this deadline. Now, maybe if you want to consolidate, there's a young player. Everybody's talked about Sadiq Bey, who's been moved to the bench, struggled shooting. You're with him and Isaiah and Killian all being 3 first-round picks in the same year. You're going to have to make a decision on one of them anyway. Maybe that's. I just think Bojan. It's just going to be too tough for Detroit to get somebody as productive as him, whether via trade or the free agency next year. And if you want to turn a corner, you can't keep trading good players for hoping that something works out down the line, that a player turns into be Bojan.
Yeah, like it's interesting. So like, obviously I believe Jeremy Grant's a free agent. Like, could you do a thing where like you pay do you want to pay Jeremy Grant $35 million a year to come back to Detroit? That's kind of the number, like that it'll take a substantial amount. He's playing at like a borderline all-star level. Like that's, I think people are going to be surprised with how big the Jeremy Grant contract is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
I don't know, man. It's hard. Maybe that is it. Maybe like you try and do multiple first-round picks for Bey and Bogdanovic because you worry about the way that Sadiq looks. You think that Bogdanovic is someone that's a little bit older. Like a team that could really use both of those guys is Phoenix, right? Like Phoenix could desperately use 2 guys like that. Yeah. But again, it comes back to, well, here's the thing. Like, let's just get real stupid, right? Like, could they really want DeAndre Ayton? I don't think so because they have Jalen Duren. Yeah. But like, Troy Weaver has shown a proclivity for bigs in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to settle now that he got Duren and Isaiah.
I think
together.
So too.
What about you think the Phoenix would part with Cam Johnson?
Maybe, but I don't know that I would want to pay Cam. Like I think Cam's really good, but like if I'm Detroit, I don't know if I want to be the team that pays him given where I am right now in my build.
Fair. And I think Isaiah Livers, who could be Cam Light. A lot of people aren't familiar with Livers, but there's potential there.
It's that, and it's like, okay, I have Bojan for the next year at 21 million as it is. Yeah. I think there's a chance Cam Johnson gets 22, 23 million, and he's worse than Bojan. Right. So like, I'm not totally sure on that one. But like, I guess that this is my point, and this goes to the point that you're stating here as well. It's hard to find the move that makes sense to move Bojan. Like Lakers fans can have the fever dream of Pat Beverly and Kendrick Nunn for Bojan, but like that would require them moving one of those unprotected picks to me. Like and you would have to. Yeah.
And Troy plans to be in Detroit in 2027, but he don't know. Can't guarantee he's going to be here in 2027. Isn't that when the pick is?
Yeah, it's 2027. And you're 100% right. Like if he moves those 2 guys for like, essentially, I think that you would then be cutting Pat Bev because it seems like he doesn't want to go to a like rebuilding situation. Yeah. And then I don't think Kendrick Nunn is very good. So like, you're going to be, by NBA standards.
No, I know. Yeah. No,
really good basketball player, but like by NBA standards. I don't think that Troy can expect to have the job in 2027 if they don't show real tangible growth here in the next 2 years after this one.
Right. So, and this isn't us saying like Troy, we're saying Troy's on the hot seat. I would say most people think Troy's done a good job given the circumstances that he's taken in. It's just if you're a GM and you're trying to turn the corner, you can't trade a guy that's good for a pick that's 5 years down the road. Not when you're in the situation that Detroit is right now. That's what we're saying.
And there's that, and there's just the fact that like how many executives get 4 years basically of winning 20 games.
Yeah.
Right. Like Troy Weaver took over before the 2020-21 season. This is now his third full season in charge, right? They're going to have won 20 games, 23 games, and let's say under 30 again this year, right? Realistically, there are not many general managers that get a chance to have 4 straight sub 30 win seasons. Just look at the year, look at the math, right? Yep. On these guys. Like it is uncommon for guys to get that kind of string, to have this kind of lack of success. Even the Pistons, even the Sixers got got cold feet on the Sam Hinkie process, right? And I don't think Weaver's undergoing anything like that. So I would not be surprised by any stretch if they keep Bojan. I think that actually lines up a lot with
the bigger
what
picture.
Makes sense for their front office as much as anything.
Yep. Yeah. I agree.